I'm Kim Garretson. My main role is to introduce my friend Asif Khan to talk about dissecting engagement in the physical world. Before I do that, I wanted to give you a sneak preview of what I'm working on that is related to this. It's not ready for prime time yet. Hopefully next year in this symposium it will be. And that is, we're moving from, we're moving from the in-app, mobile web, desktop worlds to the notification world. So on Facebook, don't quote me on these figures, but I've heard figures that something like 80% of the notifications you get from Facebook on the home screen are opened with a 60% click-through rate to what you're being notified on. So in both news and the media side, the revenue side of media, we're seeing some really interesting things in notifications. Any news organizations here have signed up for the Yo app? Here's one here. Yeah. So if you haven't signed up for the Yo app, which was called the stupidest app of all a year ago, because all it did was send the word yo to your friends. Now, as you'll see on this screen here, I think there are 125 media organizations signed up to send you a notification on a story, a topic, or whatever. Also very interesting is IFT, if this, then that, which many news organizations have signed up for that. So they call it recipes. You can sign up for a recipe that says, when a New York Times tech story becomes popular, by what metrics, send me an email. So the notification world is getting really interesting in news, and now there's the advertising side. So I'm working with a company, click, TrackIf, Minneapolis-based. You can check it out at business.trackif.com. So we started talking to retail advertisers who said, personalization, notifications, our shoppers just want to be notified on changes like a new product added, a price drop. They want to be notified when they've socially shared an item. And we said, great. And they said, one of our main motivations for doing this is we want to stop spending all the dollars for freestanding inserts, print and digital prepress with newspapers. And we said, hold on a minute. You, news organization, have great relationships with your readers. They trust that you have great advertisers who have great things to share with your audience. What if we looked at a notification world where you, news organization, could notify people on a search string? So I'm in Minneapolis, and Adrian Peterson, a lot of stories about Adrian Peterson, but he had a court case going on. So what if your readers could sign up for notifications just on Adrian Peterson and his court case, a search string, versus an RSS feed or something more broadly on Adrian Peterson? What if your readers then, with your local retail advertisers, could sign up for notifications on the retailers they like best that advertise in your newspaper and what those retailers have to offer? New items, price drops, things like that. That's what we're working on at TrackIf with newspapers, and a lot has to do with the physical world because newspapers are trying to drive shoppers to their retail advertisers. And with that, let me turn it over to Asif.
All right, thanks. Good afternoon. My name is Asif Khan. I'm the founder and the president of the Location-Based Marketing Association. So I'm really excited to be here. First of all, I'm from Canada, so hopefully that's a good thing in this room. It's been quite a trek to get here today, but I'm glad I'm here. Let me quickly introduce my organization. So Location-Based Marketing Association, we're a nonprofit industry trade group, been around about 5 years now. We have about 1,100 member companies that belong to it. We have physical operations in all the cities you see there. The green ones are the ones coming online over the next couple of months. And as our name implies, we're focused on this world of geo-targeting or location-specific marketing. However, I want you to start with this definition. So we think about location-based marketing simply as the intersection of people, places, and media. We don't think about it only in the context of mobile. So in other words, we want marketers, which is 70% of my members are brands, retailers, restaurant chains, CPGs, and such. We want those marketers to think about location as mobile being the tool to help us figure out where somebody is, the geo aspect of that. But then to ask the question, now that we know where you are as a targeted reader, consumer, viewer, however you want to define them, what media is available to us as a marketer in that particular location right now we can use to influence somebody. And that could be anything. It could be a billboard, a radio, television, newspaper, you name it. We're quite diverse as an organization, so we're focused on the entire world of geolocation. From guys putting satellites into space like Lockheed Martin and NASA, to geospatial data companies, to navigation companies like TomTom and Garmin, to media companies like Gannett and CNN, and a whole bunch of brands in the middle. So just so you get a view for kind of the breadth of the organization. Now let me look at this diagram right here. The inner ring, this is how we define the ecosystem around location targeting and the marketing opportunity. The inner ring, this is the orange ring. These are the technologies most in use today to determine where somebody is. This is the geo aspect. In North America, about 82% of all location services are happening on a smartphone using the GPS in that device to determine position. When we get inside of a building, big retail, big box store and such, or a building like this, for example, GPS can kind of break down. You got a lot of walls and concrete and pillars that can block signal. So we turn to the world of indoor location or indoor positioning, which lately has been focused on things like Apple's iBeacon technology. So beacons and Wi-Fi and other ways to figure out position. And in other parts of the world, not so much here in North America, but in the UK and in Asia and some of these other markets, the cell phone operators make their network data available to brands and to marketers to understand position by triangulating the position from a cellular tower. So orange is where you are right now. And as a marketer, we then want to ask the question, what media is available to us? That's the blue ring. Are you in front of a TV screen right now? Are you in your car? Where are you? That's what we want to know. And then the green ring is sort of the emerging mobile ecosystem where we have thousands of startups in analytics, in coupons, in deal platforms, and mapping itself, and everything in between. We did a study last year with IBM, and what we learned is that about 85% of all the data we're generating on the planet right now has some sort of location or geo element to it. Evidenced by things as simple as when you take a photo today, it's not just date and time stamped anymore, it's latitude and longitude stamped as well. When you pull that photo into iPhoto, you can group photos by place, right? So everything that we're doing, it has some sort of location element to it. And that's important because of this concept of what I call location being the new cookie, or the cookie for the physical world. And so I want you to just follow along for a moment here as kind of tell the story of the day in the life of an average consumer. We wake up in the morning. Before we get out of bed, what do? We grab the phone or the tablet on the night table beside us, right? We're in a location, we're in our home, we're engaged through a device to a form of media. In most cases, it's online media at this point. We get ready for work, we hop in the car. Now maybe we're listening to radio still. Maybe we're engaged with some kind of content on the navigation screen in our vehicle. We get to the office, now we shifted to the laptop or the desktop, at our office. And the device has changed, the location has changed, and potentially the media has changed. Middle of the afternoon, we take a break, we walk across the street to Starbucks. Now we got a mobile device in our pocket, we got digital screens and menu boards talking to us as the communication platform in that particular place. And maybe by the time we get home, we're still watching television for some of us. So what I'm getting at is throughout the day, we're constantly shifting the device and we're shifting the form of media that we're in front of, but the only thing that's consistent across all of that we can track is location. That's why it's the cookie for the physical world. So what I want to walk you through now is just some of the examples of the work that we've done with our members. And let me just set that up before I jump in all these examples. So we're a little bit different than a traditional industry association. We're a member-based group, we're international, yes, we run events and publish research. But the core of our organization is we actually take our members, we concept ideas like Google Engineering. My team dedicates time to just brainstorming new ideas and new use cases for location data. And then we go to our members and say, let's take Lamar and this beacon company and McDonald's and this other company over here, TomTom, who are all members, and let's go do something together and kind of see what we learn and publish the learnings from that. So you're going to see a bunch of outputs of that kind of thinking as we go along. So let me start with what a screen is. A screen is this, it's this, it's this, it's this, and it's now this, right? So when we talk about screens, we're not just talking about, the mobile phone. There are a lot of different formats to the way we think about a screen. And in fact, it may not even be a screen itself. It may be completely virtual. So here's 4 quick examples of some work we've done in augmented reality. And all I'm going to show you here as I walk through this is ideas of the importance of location to the way we think about technology and how we apply it. And to what Chad said earlier, we're not marketing to logos, we're marketing to humans. And you're going to see this theme throughout all the work that we do. It's about emotion as much as it is about engagement. It's experiential. And so the top left, this is Domino's Pizza in the UK. So you're waiting for the bus at this transit shelter, and now you have a print ad on the side of the transit shelter. But if you have the Domino's app, you hold your phone up over this ad, it pops out into augmented reality, and while you're waiting for the bus, you can order your pizza, you can pay for your pizza, and by the time you get home, the pizza's been delivered. So we're bringing the content to the place that the person is at right now, and we're saving them time also in this context. On the far right, top right, this is Sacramento Kings. Last spring, we took all the players, cheerleaders, and broadcasters and had them wear Google Glass in the warm-up before the game, okay? And then we aggregated all that content into a single Google Hangout and then streamed that content live over ESPN to the fan at home. There's a whole new camera perspective, if you will, on the game coming from the player themselves, coming from the cheerleader, coming from that broadcaster, right? It's a different way to think about how we generate content, and it's only available in that particular location. Bottom left, this is a company called Wallet out of San Francisco. Their idea is to take augmented reality and say, look, we can create a screen, a billboard, if you will, that's completely virtual and has no limits in size. In this case, the entire length of the 49ers field. And what you have here is fans sitting in stands and engaging with this with each other like a giant Twitter wall that's only visible through an app. And the bottom right, Narendra Modi, the new Prime Minister of India, scheduled some 3,500 speeches while he was campaigning to become Prime Minister, of which only about 1,000 he physically appeared at. The other 2,000 plus, he was projected in AR and spoke in the same technology that was used to bring Tupac back from the dead. Okay? Now, we're familiar with the concept of IoT and the Internet of Things. So everything's becoming smart around us. This table will be smart tomorrow. These light bulbs will be smart tomorrow. This carpet will be smart tomorrow. And we need to start thinking about that as marketers in terms of how we leverage this. And as news and media organizations, I think we can leverage this as well. Here's an example of a project that we did in Mexico with I'd say a tier 2 newspaper company that I think you'll find quite interesting.
Más por más. What is Más por Más? A free newspaper that reached Mexico's largest circulation top 10 in less than 3 years. We wanted to drive consumers to our site. How? With a fresh, simple, and unexpected idea. Printing out every minute-by-minute news on the paper towels using special ink. In every printout, there was a QR code which drove people to our site. Unique visitors to our site increased 37% in the first 2 weeks, and a bunch of surprised people around Mexico City's main corporate buildings were completely amused. Más por Más presents Paper Towel Dispenser News.
There you go. So even your paper towel dispenser can be a smart connected device. The next project I want to share with you is this project that we did last fall in Edinburgh. So we have a chapter in Edinburgh, and as you probably know, there was a referendum that happened to seek independence from Britain. And we decided to kind of work with one of our member companies out there and the Scotsman newspaper to do something kind of interesting. So what we did was there's this company called Bubble. They're like a local Scottish version of Foursquare that many Scots use. And so we teamed up with these guys and we said, okay, every time somebody goes and checks in and shares their location, we want them to also say whether they're planning on voting yes or no in the referendum. And so over time, minute by minute, day by day, for 3 months leading up to this referendum, we're tracking and we're creating a data visualization of how we think this vote's going to trend. And this was also available on a microsite. So anybody anywhere in the world, in fact, if you were expat Scot living in New York, you could also go here and indicate how you would vote, and you could see this global visualization of how that that would go. So, it's important to look at how we think about the data, but, leverage the location specificity of it to create these kinds of interesting mashups. The other area that we're really excited about right now is this idea of telematics and wearables and how those things are coming together. Telematics being the connected car, wearables obviously being, things like the Apple Watch. And a couple of projects that we've already done, top left, I'll highlight. This is Quizno's ad that you can see here. So what we're doing is we're taking Groupon's deal content and mashing it up directly with AccuRadio, AHA Radio. It's a streaming radio service available in some vehicles. And so based on the real-time awareness of where that car is right now, we can deliver geolocal specific deal content, in this case coming from Groupon, right into the navigation system of the car. On the top right, this past season, we had all the players in the NFL actually have RFID chips embedded in the shoulder pads of their uniforms. And so we were able to track the movements of those players on the field. And not just, in sort of the way that you would see it from a camera point of view, but because this is in the uniform itself, we can look at the speed and the movement and the pivoting and all these kinds of things of the actual players, and feeding that data to the coaches for future, adjustments to performance and other things, but also to the broadcasters to be able to, relay some of this information to fans that are watching at home. I'll skip the other stuff. The other thing that's I want you to think about, this is a new project from a student at the Pratt Institute in New York that just launched in the last week. They've launched basically a new series of chocolate bars called the 5 Boroughs. And so there's obviously 5 boroughs in New York. And so what happens is now you can go buy a chocolate bar and it comes wrapped in this beautiful, handmade map of that particular borough of New York. So you can only buy a Queens, chocolate bar in Queens and a Bronx chocolate bar and so on. And it's really interesting. They're taking the content that they have and they're actually, printing it out and selling chocolate and making a lot of money so far from this kind of novelty, but, we'll see where it goes from here. The other thing to think about is when we think about location, there's a tendency to think about location only in the context of the physical world. But it's equally important to think about it, I think, in what we can do in the online world, in the IP world. And so there's a lot of companies like Newstar and Digital Element that have rich databases of IP geolocation information that allow you to target consumers in interesting ways. And to illustrate the power of what you can do with IP, I'm going to show you a project that we did in Russia with a community newspaper organization that I think you'll find quite interesting. Here we go.
The Village, an online city newspaper that really cares for the city and its citizens. Douche parking is a huge problem in cities in Russia. Okay, there aren't many places to park, but there are people who just don't care about others. The Village.ru has decided to make such behaviour socially unacceptable using digital media. We've created a free app. It takes pictures of wrongly parked cars, recognises car number plates, the car model and colour. The data is streamed live to banner ads that are targeted through an IP address. So people who live or work close to locations where these cars were parked see it. These banners appear as pop-ups on websites, so you can see the actual car and its registration number that has been photographed, interrupting you while you're trying to read an online article. When you roll your cursor over the banner, it lets you know that this particular car is annoying people in a certain street in your city right now. In order to get rid of this annoying car, you simply share the photo of the parking douche on social media, such as Facebook. Then it'll disappear. Thanks to your IP address, only douches in your area will be highlighted, so all the offenders will be exposed to their colleagues, friends and neighbours. Thanks to this naming and shaming campaign, more and more people are now caring about where and how they park. ITR percentage over 70% and huge buzz in social media due to shares and likes.
The lesson I want you to get, again, is don't think about location only in the context of physical bricks and mortar places, but really powerful data available on the IP side as well. Quickly talk about Wi-Fi beacons and what I call bulbs. So the world of indoor locations exploded. And as you go after retailers and brands from an advertising point of view, this is something every retailer we work with is deploying beacon networks at the moment. These are just some of the companies that are members of my organization that are involved in that space. But I want to just quickly say to you that it's not just about beacons, right? There are technologies coming quickly, on the heel of that will, I think, displace beacons in the next 12 to 18 months. So I'll highlight 2 of those quickly. ByteLight, company out of MIT Labs, based in Boston, obviously. These guys have developed a positioning system that uses light bulbs and electromagnetic signatures. So basically they go into a store, they change all the light bulbs. Your phone has the ability to read ambient light sensor readings, your smartphone does. And so basically they can determine where you are by what light bulb you're standing close to. That's how we figure out location in this way. Indoor Atlas is even cooler. So Indoor Atlas actually requires no hardware at all. So no Wi-Fi, no beacons, no bulbs, no nothing. What they figured out is that the Earth has its own magnetic field. Your smartphone has a compass that generates a magnetic field. Most modern buildings today, the structure is framed in steel, and every unique piece of steel actually creates a minute displacement of the Earth's core. So they walk into a building, they create a magnetic fingerprint, one-time exercise for that building, and then when you walk into the store, they just match your compass reading against the reading of the building, and they know where you are without anything. Okay, so there's a lot of crazy location stuff that's on the horizon that, you know, as marketers, we're trying to get the world to start thinking about and get ready for. The other thing that we're really big on as an organization, as I said at the beginning, we think about location marketing as simply as that intersection of people, places, and media. And by that we mean all media, not just mobile. So we go out of our way in our brainstorming and our projects to actually look at ways to blend media together. Here's an example of a project that we did in Brazil last year with Nivea as the advertiser, where we started the conversation in a print newspaper, in this case magazine article, and then moved that to a mobile location-specific array. Here we go. Blue Nivea dot is a beacon embedded in the field. Yeah. So don't think about your distribution channel as a single form of media, right? It's not just mobile or not just print, but look for ways to kind of blend those things together and look for ways to leverage location or where people are to execute on that. When we think about location as an organization, we also don't think about it as a platform. So in other words, we don't say, hey, you just spent all your last couple of years focused on social media as a marketing organization, and now we want you to focus on location. In fact, what we say is, no, location is really just a data set that's readily available to us, coming at us from so many different sensors and inputs, and it actually affects all media, from social to mobile to everything else. And we really want people to think that way. Top left, this is Google outside, a project we're running in the UK with Google right now. So this is transit shelters again, except the screens they're digital screens on these. We have 33 right now in London. And there's no predetermined ad buy. All the content that gets served into this is based on the time of day, based on who's standing in the shelter, based on the weather, based on a whole bunch of other factors, right? It's all real time being served into this. Then you have Pandora. So Pandora, everybody's familiar with Pandora. Pandora, like all these streaming radio services, they kind of pay prohibitive licensing fees that terrestrial radio stations don't have to pay. So they got a little frustrated. They went out last year and bought a radio station in Kansas City to kind of skirt some of the rules. And when we saw this, we went to them and we said, hey, we got an idea. You have a lot of data, location data about what people listen to, what's trending, and you have that by city, by even areas within a city. Why don't you take that data and give it to the disc jockey at the terrestrial station you just bought to change the playlist? And do you think that would positively affect ad sales? Well, guess what? It did. So we were able to show Pandora that the data that they were already sitting on as an organization, in fact, was valuable to what they thought was their competition, is now a whole new revenue stream, right? So there's a lot of data sitting inside these organizations that we can unlock and create new revenue streams from. And lastly, back to Chad's comment that I referenced earlier, it's about emotion, and it's about how we tie these things together. So I'm going to end with this last example of a project we just did in the UK in the last month or so. for a charity that's focused on women. So take a look at this, and it blends a lot of things together. So it's got beacons, it's digital out of home, it's very location specific, it's mobile, it uses geo-targeted SMS, and it takes a lot of our members' technologies and puts it together in one execution. Here we go. But it's about emotion. Is a consortium in the UK between Vodafone and So that's what I wanted to share with you today, and I want to just leave you with these three thoughts. A place is where you are right now. It's not just a building we can walk into and check in on Foursquare or Facebook and say we're here. It's wherever we are. Think about this idea that location is a cookie for the physical world, and being able to understand where people are, what screen or what media is available to us in that place to influence them is how we need to start thinking. And it's not just about mobile, but it's truly about the integration of all media in those places. Thank you.
Any questions? Questions? Yeah, okay.
This is so fascinating. Thank you. Kind of like with Chad, I feel like you speak a whole different language that is so useful for us. I appreciate it. I'm really interested in the process of opting in. So that last example, people will have opted into that text messaging service and then they get their invitation, right?
That's right. So we've basically, if you subscribe to one of those mobile operators, the three of them together, then you can opt in to receive these kinds of things. Yeah.
So as someone, I do a whole lot of my work with invitations. Like what do I hope people will do to interact with me? And who am I trying to reach and on what platform? So I wonder if you have other examples to share of ways that not just to sell things, but to get people to share about themselves or opinions or voting or something. What are the other platforms that make that possible?
Yeah, well, I mean, just in that last example, one of the things that we see, without getting into all the nightmares around privacy issues and location from that point of view, but one of the strategies that we see works really well is connecting to some sort of charitable or social good cause, right? Over and over again, we've seen when brands team up with these things, you know, sort of the opt-in rates, the check-in rates, all the rates related to engagement and sharing of content, they skyrocket, you know, anywhere from 20 to 50% in some cases, because the consumer looks at it as, they don't think about privacy, they don't think about any of these things. They just think about, I'm supporting this cause. And that works really well. The other thing that we've been testing with I don't know if I can say the Gap right now is we're running an interesting test right now with Snapchat that is really around social magnification. So you walk into a Gap store, based on detecting your presence from a beacon, what we'll do is we'll push an offer out over Snapchat to the consumer, say, save 20% on these jeans today. But it disappears the way Snapchat messages disappear. It's only good for the next 2 minutes, so you better hustle. But if you share that with somebody else that you're friends with on Snapchat, they get the deal and the value of yours increases in terms of time. and percentage. So there are lots of things like that that you can use to, these social magnifiers to drive engagement.
Okay. Asif Khan. Oh, one more question. Okay.
It seems that corporations have figured something out that we in media have been slow to, and that is the idea of thinking about the needs, the whole needs of our audience and our community. So my example would be in content marketing or native advertising, you have Kimberly-Clark, and they're not just thinking about how they sell diapers, they're thinking about our clients are parents, and we want to provide content that is relevant for parents. And so it isn't just about how we drop in, product placement. And I'm just curious if you have any thoughts about that being outside the industry, how media can take that and say, we have an audience and we have a product that they buy. What are their other needs and how do we help meet those needs? And I think someone earlier was talking about how we form the bridge between advertisers and their products and our customers, our clients for media. Just any thoughts on that role of a media organization?
Yeah, I think a couple of things on that. I think brand, when we talk about brands, whether it's a Kimberly-Clark or a Coca-Cola or whoever, these guys are really have in the last 5 to 10 years in particular have really focused on storytelling, right, and creating sort of this long stream message or story of this brand that from a consumer point of view, what they're looking for is where can this consumer come in and join the story and make it their own story, right? Coke is fantastic at that. And I think, as media organizations, you need to think about, how do we start to become part of the story itself with these consumers? In other words, so I'll give you an example of another test that we're doing. I can't say which retailer right now, but somebody like a Starbucks. So think about the idea. If you go back a generation, right? It used to be that so our day was broken into 3 parts, with our grandparents' generation, anyways. Where you go to work and then you'd go home, but in the middle, before you went home, you went to the pub, right? And that's where news was talked about. That's where people exchanged with each other. And that in this current generation, that's been replaced by things like Facebook and everything else. But what we're seeing is this kind of trend back, this desire to have physical contact again, because we're people, we're still humans, right? And I think one of the interesting examples of something that we're testing right now is this idea that can a Starbucks-like environment become again the hub for the local community. And when you're in there, if there's a screen in there, instead of it showing you CNN, no disrespect to CNN, but isn't it more interesting perhaps to see what Johnny did in the soccer game last night, that you probably know Johnny around the corner, or to see local news as opposed to something that's only international all the time, right? And that kind of stuff where if you can give the consumer control over it, so we're building a portal where individual consumers and businesses and people local to that Starbucks can go into this portal and contribute content that will then display on screens locally around there. So we're kind of empowering the local consumer to kind of be part of the story, if you will.
And that'll have to be the final word. Thank you
sorry.
very much.
Thanks.
No, great. Fantastic presentation. Thanks so much.